welcome everybody. While folks are streaming their way in from whatever previous meeting everybody was on, I really appreciate everybody making time this morning to be able to join us for a little bit and learn about some really exciting new features available to the Exacq VMS platform, and giving me a chance to highlight some of those that are available on the Illustra brand cameras that I work with, and available from others too. Like so many things about Exacq, you're not shoehorned into any one solution to deliver the set of features that you're looking for your customer. But I think you're going to be really impressed with the feature set that you guys get to see today. So thank you so much for making some time to join with us, learn a bit more about these solutions, and hopefully see something that you maybe haven't known about, or a new trick that's going to help you guys in your day-to-day operation and the systems everybody's working with as well, or some things to keep in mind the next time you're looking to expand your system, these new features that have come to market. So let me introduce myself before I start getting too far. My name's David. I'm with IMI. We are the East Coast manufacturers reps for the Exacqvision VMS and recorder solutions, the Illustra brand cameras, as well as a number of other complementary technologies that go into all the different pieces that make a security solution work, from the network to the technologies at the edge to the background stuff that happens in a closet somewhere that's so vital to making all this stuff work. So if you ever have any questions about security solutions in general, from any kind of way that might apply, your IMI team is a perfect sounding board for those questions, and be able to deliver answers working with such a wide range of technologies. Who are the IMI team? Well, you probably guys know them as the folks who got involved with you to get you in touch about today's call and to be able to view this today. So thank you so much to the IMI team for reaching out, staying involved with everybody, and being that great resource that you guys turn to. That's really what I think brings people here, is that we're able to deliver those types of solutions, answer those types of questions, and learn a little bit all together along the way. So thank you so much, IMI guys, for getting involved and getting folks on the call today. So without further ado, let me start off with just a little bit of background, and then we're going to just dive right into the software and start looking at these features. But first, I wanted to set the scene a little bit in terms of some updates, and also just not to take for granted what is object classification versus just the standard type of motion detection that we're all probably used to with our existing systems. So to start off with, this is a pretty new update to Exacqvision. Exacqvision comes out with 4 updates a year, quarterly software updates that include new features, new integrations, new camera support, patching items, all sorts of good things with a frequency that I just don't see other manufacturers able to do. So I wanted to highlight some of those newest items that you may, that are easy to miss with the frequency that they come at you. One of the big ones that I wanted to take an opportunity of this forum to highlight is the Exacq Q series. They're entry-level, small system servers. Originally were Linux only. There is now a Windows option for that Q series system. So it's a great entry point for people who are still, really looking for a Windows OS. And that build features CanTech on board. So you get CanTech access control software included with any of the Exacqvision Windows servers. So that is also applicable now to that Q series for those smaller installs that you might be doing. It's a great just little additional value beyond the familiarity of Windows. And I think it makes for, repeat customers and just better value for end users. You're not having 2 servers doing 2 different things. It's kind of an all-in-one solution for you at that point, really keeping some of the cost off. And on top of that, a big focus of today's seminar is going to be focusing on a couple new software features in particular. So we're definitely going to be talking about object classification, as the name says. So object classification just goes beyond motion detection, using the capabilities of these cameras to try to identify, well, what exactly is this item moving across my screen? And different solutions have different categories available to them depending on what cameras you might be working with from these latest generations. So whenever you're looking at these next gen features and you're qualifying cameras for your Exacqvision solution, you want to take advantage of our website. I'll be showing you guys, they've got a great camera portal to look at all the different models and see, well, what features are supported by which brand, which model. And that goes for these, next level features as well. And they're all going to categorize a little bit different. We've also added the ability to access the camera's web GUI within the Exacqvision software. If you have access to that camera network, you're not bouncing between interfaces, opening up a web browser, particularly for our Linux customers. I think this was a bit of a pain because you had to navigate Linux around a bit to get access to all these items. So now you'll see this when we're going through it today. It's a really handy way to get at your camera's web user interface there to set up some of these next generation features. And also didn't want to discount a really nice update that came out on the mobile app side. The mobile app updates are easy to miss, folks, because if you don't do the actual web services updates, you might not be seeing some of the latest, really nice things that have been added to the mobile app experience over the last year. A few big ones. Cleaning up the setup and settings menu. It's a lot easier to navigate now, a lot more concise. And adding the ability, especially for larger camera systems, to have a so-called endless scrolling. It's just going to show the cameras that you have, but rather than picking a view of 2 or 4 or 8, it's just going to line up all of your cameras that you can scroll through, a lot like maybe some of the consumer video apps that you've seen. So nice updates on that end too. And of course, some new integrations. I mean, I'll bring up the camera page here for just a moment. But just to highlight, because every new release brings up a little bit more. If I go to my camera partners here, I think we're up more than 5,300 individual camera vendors now, or sorry, individual camera models tested on the solution. 5,314 as of today from 102 different camera vendors globally. So just phenomenal support. And again, to highlight, you're not pigeonholed into any one vendor. It's about whoever makes the right camera for your solution. I think you're going to see some really nice highlights within our Illustra line that we're going to be talking about today. We shift around when we add new lines. So just within the Illustra brand, more than 200 individual models supported on the Exacqvision solution. And another highlight that I know is a really popular solution out there, we talk a lot about the CanTech solution because it pairs so well. It's paired on those Windows boxes with your CanTech license, so a great reason to inquire about that product. But again, not shoehorned into that. Brevo access control has been added to the supports. That's the cloud version. We've got information up on the website. I believe there is a license on the Brevo end that you do need for that. But it brings in a lot of those everyday niceties that people are looking for from these integrations. The on-camera click-to-release door buttons, the filtered searches, that's going to be such a big focus of what we're talking about today. Now, Illustra makes an awful lot of different cameras. It's more than 230 supported on the Exacqvision platform. And the idea is that they've got really into niche models for different applications. You might have seen our seminar on things like the body-worn camera, or some of the newest releases from them, like the PTZs and Gen 4 cameras that we're going to be talking about. And it's a constant development cycle for them. It feels like there's always new models with new capabilities coming to market, and not neglecting older models either that are part of our cybersecurity platform, so that for the life cycle of the camera, there's a constant stream of updates for whatever patches might be needed for cybersecurity issues that develop over time. It's never a one-step, one-and-done process. And those firmware updates can add functions to some of these cameras as well, especially with these AI platforms and the analytic platforms that these cameras are capable of, that we'll be talking about quite a bit. So to highlight a few cameras that really are going to be the focus of what we're talking about, it's my chance to showcase these newer features. IMI works with the Illustra brand cameras, and they've got a whole new generation of models bringing this object classification in addition to analytics to the edge. So object classification is available on a group of models in the Flex and Pro series. So the varifocal models, the Pro Gen 4 PTZ, and the new Pro multi-sensor actually can do the object classification on all 4 sensors within that unit. So that's great for corner mounting on a building, getting that sweeping panoramic view of a parking lot, things like that, and having those next-gen features on top of that. And this is an AI trained, they call it deep learning type of solution. This is not us trying to say to computer, here's how I would describe a car. We've found over time that computers are much better at learning themselves. We provide them information and then help them build these categorizations. And it just makes it so much more accurate than if you're familiar with maybe older camera models and older styles that really attempted to do these types of things with, in my experience, rather mixed success in the past. This current generation of technology is just so much more accurate than the previous gen that you might have seen on market. So if you got burned a little bit in the past, it's still worth looking at these newer technologies, maybe putting some through proof of concepts if you're looking for critical applications, things like that. I think you're going to find the latest generation much more satisfying than in what had come before. And the Illustra cameras, I mentioned different brands will have different categories. Some might be more simplistic, person versus vehicle. Others are going to break them out into more specific categories. And the Illustra has quite a range of specific categories that it can try to identify. So you see I've got a list here. It'll identify people, and then for vehicle types, cars, trucks, buses, motorbikes, bicycles, and trains. So a wide range of categories that will be applicable for different types of uses, where these can be used to trigger effects, they can be used to trigger recording, of course, and massaged in different ways depending on how that additional information is going to impact your user. So now, perfect point to pivot over and show you what this looks like when you're actually using it, and we'll talk a bit about the setup and what this brings to a system as well. So I've got, hopefully everybody can see, please let me know in the chat if you can't see. I've brought up a few different cameras that I've set up here in my office, as well as some of our demonstration cameras you've probably seen on some other demos that I've done for these systems. And at first blush, it looks like any other camera system and any other cameras maybe that I've brought in. What we're not seeing is the work that's going on in the background. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to right click and I'm going to say I want to view the analytics that are being captured here. And if you look now, I've got items being highlighted, trails being added as items move through my screen. So I can kind of see these applications in real time, in use. And depending on what rules you've set up, you can set up different alerts based on these classifications. Let me bring up just the full res outdoor version. Here's a different outdoor view. So you see it's picked up 4 vehicles in the lane that I'm looking at here, actively tracking those and pathing them. Now it makes for a busier screen. It's really cool to turn on and use that to test and make sure that it is properly tracking items and finding things. But it ends up making for a busy scene. So normally, once you get used to that, you're not necessarily leaving that on. Show you the Pro outdoor as well. So just to talk about live view applications briefly. Live view, I know, is not a use case for every type of customer, but there can be some really handy things that we can do with analytics and with object classification for folks that are taking advantage of that. And the biggest one that I would think of that comes to mind for me is our event monitoring capabilities, where I can have a monitor up on display, whether that's off on my wall or a little side monitor on my desk that has either one tile of an overall view or maybe the entire view is just there to populate with alarm-related video or event-related video. So I can have a car or truck pulling into my parking lot pull up an alert, or someone loitering in my parking lot pull up an alert. We've talked about those types of use cases before. Event classification or object classification really just makes that more accurate, because now we're not having other types of instances of motion, whether it's cloud cover, trees moving, animals, things like that. They're less likely to be in these filtered search results. It's not that we're not recording that. If you're recording motion, you're getting all of that motion. But we can use that when we're going to search to go filter through things, and we're live monitoring, we can use that to maybe pop up more specific instances where it's going to take over my screen or a particular window with video or trigger an alarm. As you see now, I've got my red bordered video. So again, just to show the work that's going on in the background. One thing that I'd set up, you'll see the occasional green tag as it classifies trucks. So it can classify all different manner of items. So the real function of this for a lot of folks, aside from those live views, maybe popping up items to certain windows, making that a bit more useful contextually. So it's not just throwing every instance of motion in front of me. We can use this to now do more refined searches as well. So I'm going to take us now into the search mode for the system. So now I'm in my timeline search. And when I go to select either my Flex camera or my Pro camera from the Gen 4 here, you'll see I have video streams available, and I've set these up for smart streaming. That's a topic for another day, but highly recommend taking advantage of multiple streams so you get different levels of quality depending on your internet connection. You can pull in different views. I'm going to pull out my high quality view, and I'm going to pull in some of the different classifications and analytics for this camera. So you kind of pick that option just like a camera stream. And if you select the root camera, you see it selects all the video and all of my setup object classifications here. So I'm going to start off with my Pro. So if you'll see now, if you're familiar with the timeline searching, I have a video preview window, and then underneath I have my timeline. In this case, I'm just looking at the last couple hours before I got into the office and opened up my software this morning. So you see I've got a lot of motion and alarm triggered video. I have a very busy metadata stream, and that is our core object classification. It's the list of all of the items that the cameras are detecting. And I actually set up specific detection areas to try to actually make that even more accurate, where I've set up areas where I'm expecting these types of vehicles. And that's where you see some of these separate alerts underneath. Instead of a row for each camera, or rather, maybe better said, in addition to the row for each camera, I've also got a row for each of these analytics that I've set up for these particular objects in particular areas. So maybe I'm looking at this camera and I want to see buses that have come through. Off to the right, and this is the piece that's going to be maybe newest for folks, off to the right, I have this keyword area. And if you've used the access control integration, you're probably maybe a little more familiar with this, as this is where for the Cantech integration and for some of the other third-party integrations, we actually pull in some of the audit trail from that system that we can use to compare against video. In this case, it's the cameras feeding us the different types of objects. So in this case, I've highlighted the bus detection that I've set up. And you'll see each time I click on something in here, there's my bus. There's a bus. So you see here how easily I'm able to filter based on those different types of objects. Motorcycle, we had a motorcycle come through. Oh, it saw the forklift. I will say one thing I want to call out. I am on the 5th floor of a building looking out. This is a really tuned analytics more for your normal mounting heights. I'll have to say I've been incredibly impressed with how accurate these views have been given the suboptimal vantage point that I have from the 5th floor of my building here shooting out a window. But I've been really impressed with the accuracy. Now with the Pro cameras, you do have the option of the full analytics suite as well, which can do some things like set up alerts for color-based objects too. So I have another example here of an analytic that I've set up looking for red vehicles, red objects, things like that. Now I say red, it takes in a range of shades, of course, just to account for what's red to me might be slightly orange or slightly pink to somebody, so it's always a bit of a range. Now, that takes a little bit of setup, and I'll show you guys the setup to be able to get these rows for the individual items that you like. Honestly, the easiest way to filter it, you always have this full analytic metadata stream. And when I've got these highlighted, you'll see I'm right next to my search. Let me just highlight this for folks. Right to the left of your timeline, and this has been added in one of the more recent updates. You see that show filters little check mark right above the search button. When I go into the show filters, we've got this great little kind of contextual menu that knows, well, here's all the different ways I can sort the information I'm getting from the camera, that metadata. What am I looking for? Am I looking for a person, for one of those particular types of vehicles that we might put up? I can just select the filter that I'm looking for, hit that search button again. And now you'll see it filtered all that metadata for specific instances of people being detected. So real easy to go and filter that. So you can see I can scroll through. Much easier way, especially in a very busy traffic area like this, to go and sort through and find these types of events by clicking. And this is the same type of effect you get too with the access control when we're looking for those same types of items. You're going to see more and more metadata from those types of systems too. So very, very easy to go and filter for people or vehicles or particular classes of vehicle. Again, I can filter this for things like trucks. If I'm looking for a particular vehicle that is maybe described as coming through my lot, I'm not going through every instance of motion at this point. You see that trace and tracking on the vehicle that triggered that alert. So just like the live view, you can turn on and off, those tracking and things like that. That's imprinted over the video. It's not layered into it. So if you're presenting this video to law enforcement, you don't see that tracking information and things like that. That's really used to generate the alerts themselves. So again, that filter menu just changed. If you're familiar with earlier versions of this, you had to kind of type in what you were looking for. If you didn't get the verbiage, quite right, it would be a little bit difficult to maybe find a particular object. Some cameras they assigned, rather than maybe a traditional kind of label like this, they would have like an object ID or something like that you'd have to have a little compare list. Again, I just happen to really like the experience with these Illustras that I've set up, the kind of range that they have. Similarly, let me take a look here at my Flex camera. Now my Flex camera I set up much more simply to give probably more of a real world scenario of what it's going to look like for you when you're not playing with it quite as much as I am getting ready for an event like this. Here we are. So you can see here, so this is the Flex series. If you're not familiar with Illustra's nomenclature, their Flex series is really their everyday series. 2, 4, or 8 megapixel options in here. So I've got the 8 megapixel zoomed. Again, not exactly an ideal scenario, out of my window from the 5th floor looking down with more of a profile. Still able to get very good detection with this. So you see the different classifications of vehicle that it streams in. And I've actually been able to set up a couple analytics as well. So in addition for these Illustra cameras having the classification, we can use that as part of analytic rules on the Flex and Pro series to say, hey, well, not just when you see a car, but maybe you see a car traveling in a particular direction, or a person is fine on the sidewalk, but crossing into this area is going to be an issue. Or loitering, maybe a person lingering or dwelling, as we call it, within an area for an extended period of time is a red flag. We can use that combination of the analytics with the object classification to really dive deep. So to finish off here, to show you how this is implemented, I'm going to show you how easy it is to just turn this metadata stream on, and also just how easy it is to get a little bit more advanced with it if you have a need. So I'm going to go into my settings here for this camera, and actually I'm going to take a shortcut. I'm going to right click on this camera, and I'm going to go to the properties. And because I'm an administrator, I can go to the settings page. Now I've bridged my laptop here onto the camera network in addition to my normal network here, so that I can have direct access to the cameras. So I wanted to make that clear. This is not an end around firewalling or having your camera network isolated from your normal network. You do need access to the camera network for that little IP address link. But just to show you again where that's at, you'll see it is a live link for the IP address. Rather than prompting a separate browser, I can actually web browse to that device right through here. So logged in, I can see the raw stream. It's going to start overlaying some of the different things it's picking up. When I go into the setup for the Illustra cameras here, you'll see I've got my main video information. I've got some other setup areas on the left-hand side. Where we want to go is that events and actions. That's where all the more advanced features in terms of analytics and things like that are. So about 3 entries down, right in the middle, you see analytics. And that's where you'll see a tab for object classification. And all you need to do is turn it on. This highlight detections, all that's going to do is kind of let you check, that you've maybe adjusted your field of view the right way, that it's starting to pick up different objects in its range. This is also where you see you have the ability to set up particular rules. All it takes is the ability to turn on that one checkbox. Once you've saved that, that's all there is to it. It just turns on. There's not even an apply button at that point, and it's going to start streaming into Exacq. I can add things like a rule here and say, again, for things like loitering, I can say, hey, I want to know if anybody, you get used to, if you've been on some of these Illustra seminars before, so the Illustra suite of analytics, it was an object left somewhere, maybe a car is abandoned in an area where people aren't supposed to be parking, like a fire lane or something like that. Enter and exit for vehicles, especially being able to separate vehicles from other types of objects, being able to do entry exit counts and get a rough idea, the activity in your parking lot, things like that. You can pick, again, do I care about a vehicle loitering, or is it really, I don't want people just mulling about in a particular area perhaps. You can set how confident, what amount of time are they maybe allowed in a particular area, and then it's just kind of drawing out, well, where is that area maybe an issue in the shot. Now, when you're doing analytics, framing your shot and everything is going to be very appropriate. You want to walk test that type of stuff, make sure you're generating it, because it is a minimum kind of pixels on target. There's a lot of math that happens in the background on all of this to make this engine work and make these categorizations. So you want to make sure that the way you framed your shot is giving you the best chance for success. So very easy to turn on there right within the camera. Now, if you've adjusted these rules, we are going to want to reconnect to the camera to get a fresh pull of these analytic streams and these analytic rules that are available. So you'll notice now when I go back to my camera configuration, when I go and exit out of that, it may prompt you saying, hey, with what you've changed, we may need to reconnect to the camera to pull this new stream of information. All right, folks. Well, we're just past 10:30 here. So hopefully that gave you just a little bit of look on the feature itself, how it's running in the background, what are some of the things we can do with it from a live view perspective, but certainly maybe for most folks even more so from that searching, filtering those search results to more meaningful results and not needing a class and database management to be able to kind of pick out the different filters that you might be looking for. And then finally, that it's not a hard solution to set up, at least not in the Illustra cameras that I have my experience with. It's just turning on that feed so it's available, and then you can get more advanced if you want to detect particular behaviors with those analytics in addition to those classifications. So now for the folks that have been able to stay, I'm going to open this up. I think you all should be able to unmute yourselves. Let me just make sure. Yes, you should all be able to unmute yourselves if you have any questions. I'm going to keep an eye on the chat here, and I'm also going to put in the chat for everybody a few files just for some information so you know just some hands-on items about these cameras in particular, about the latest with the Exacq solution, so you have some resources for you going forward.
David, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Hey, no, this is Juan out of the Orlando area. No, Exacq has always been our main, product is for CCTV, and it's very good. It meets the, I'm going to say the mom and pops all the way up to airports, and all that stuff. But are these cameras? What's the status on parts? How can I help out as a salesperson to help the install manager find parts for him?
Great question.
Going to Annixter, getting a quote, is there any other means of getting a number, a location where they at, etc.?
Yeah, absolutely. Just give us a call at the IMI office or work with your local IMI rep. We can absolutely help, figure out what inventory levels are, expected dates for product. I know that's kind of been in flux for a lot of people, and at certain times, it has been for us too. But at least lately, it's felt like we've had a pretty good stream, especially of these newer models with these initial orders coming in. So I'm not aware of anything particular at the moment in terms of back orders or stuff like that to warn anybody about, but always engage with your IMI folks because we can help try to streamline that type of stuff. We deal, at least in my end, with the suggested retail pricing, so we can always help you out with that. You probably have an idea, having purchased through your particular distribution points before, what your rough discounts might be. But obviously, we work with your distribution partners to make sure they've got the accurate pricing on these latest items, and we're always help you to help work with them directly as well. Make sure everybody knows what they need so we can deliver you what you need in a timely manner.
So do I have to register the project with you to get?
Oh, no. No, you don't have to register anything. That's more when we get terms of, projects that you might be involved with, helping getting things specified, things like that. That's all going to be, registration stuff that you're handling with your local rep. But just for getting information about, again, stocking levels, suggested retail pricing, things like that, that's something we can help you with directly.
And I can be provided a quote instead of going to Annixter?
Yes, again, we won't have necessarily your discounted costs via Annixter because they're the ones who know that.
Comments. Okay.
Yep. So we'd always deal with the suggested retail, with what you're getting from us, but we're more than happy to help provide that to you so you have some budgetary numbers to at least work with in the early stages or while you're waiting for that to get completed.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, David.
Of course. Thank you for joining. Keep my eye on the chat here as well. I did put... should be 5 documents in the chat. I apologize if I doubled up on any of them, but I wanted to give you guys the latest portfolio for Exacqvision showing the updates to the Q series and all the latest available software, hardware-wise from them, as well as particularly the data sheets for the cameras from Illustra that are supporting this object classification. So I mentioned it's the Pro and Flex Generation 4 varifocals. Those have that. Those are the two that really I was showing you guys today that I've got set up, through the window here at my office. In addition to that, that new Pro multi-sensor. Great for doing that object classification over wide areas. It's that 4-in-1 repositionable, in that model. Real lot of capability in there to be able to do that across all four. And even the new Pro PTZ has object classification, which can help it be more accurate with some of the other cool stuff it can do in terms of triggering presets, following actions, and things like that. Keep going here. I'll keep my eye on the chat. Are fisheye cameras available? So yes, fisheye cameras are available. There actually is a brand new Pro fisheye that is coming out. I don't know. I unfortunately didn't get a chance to sit on the, I think, release seminar for that, or it might be just coming out. I was just on vacation, so I may have missed the release seminar for that. But fisheye cameras are definitely available. I'd have to check, you see, what that feature set is of that newest Pro model. But Exacqvision handles fisheyes generally very, very well with de-warping capabilities. Let's see, do I have one? Here we are. That's just a nice little bubble. Thank you, Bert, for putting in the info on the Gen 4 fisheye there. Always good to take a look at your fisheyes too in terms of capabilities. This de-warping function that I'm showing here, splitting it up different ways, really, really popular with these fisheye view cameras. Some cameras only support that in Windows, versus if someone's using an iPhone or an Android phone or a Mac PC or something like that. So no matter what camera you're using, when you're getting to advanced features, whether it's fisheyes, object classification, always take a look at those support pages. I know this one in particular is a Illustra model that does support Windows, Linux, and Mac. So whatever platform you're on, it's going to be able to decode, stretch it, even from the mobile app, which is pretty fun. Give folks a chance to find their mute button. I'm famous for double muting myself, although somehow I forgot to do that to my phone. Oh, great presentation always. What is the learning curve like? That's a great question. In terms of deployment, thankfully, I don't think it's much of one at all. It's really just remembering that step. It's not just connecting to the camera and then, you're getting your motion detection and all that. It's really just enabling that, at least on the Illustra cameras. You just go to that analytics page, check off that you want the advanced metadata, and the camera starts doing the work from there. In terms of the more advanced stuff with the analytics, in terms of setting up your perimeters, if you're doing like perimeter crossing detection, entry versus exit, that's a little bit steeper of a learning curve because you do kind of have to frame the shots, for success to give you the best pixels on target for what you're trying to capture going into those areas and making sure you have enough to cover the breadth or depth of those areas. So there's a bit more of a learning curve when you start getting into those advanced applications. But that's something we can help with as well. And actually, they've got some information on the Learn site. So if you go to the Illustra Cameras website, you'll see a wealth of information on there, some of it more general about different applications for these types of features. But there's a lot of different training videos and things like that that are all available as well. And this isn't behind a paywall. I'm not logged in with some special account that goes and gives me access to this. Oh, I might be starting to overtax my internet speed with the video and the sharing and all that. Here we are. The Learn page that you'll see here links to that. So there's going to be some more information in here as well to help you with that. And that's something where, at least in my backyard, we've got, well, actually, one of the lucky things about dealing with Illustra and Exacq, they've got local factory resources just about everywhere from the IMI team and beyond. So we can actually work with you guys locally, maybe on some training to kind of go over what would be needed for particular applications when they're advanced like that. In terms of access control integration, that's going to depend a little bit on who the vendor is that we're tying into. That can be anything from just simple relay, input-output type integrations that works with pretty much any type of system. The more advanced integrations, you'll find the information about on the Exacq web page. So they've got an access under partners, you'll see access control and the range of different partners that we've got. You see the new Brevo integration info there. We've got our Cantech on here, a whole range of others too. And all of these will kind of tell you what's needed in terms of Exacq software. Some of these require enterprise Exacq software for certain features or just blanketly. Some of them need certain software licenses to be in place. So they're all a little bit different, but you can find out whatever information about whichever particular system you need to tie into. As well as, again, just a reminder that, because that's new, that Q series from Exacq will come with Cantech on board when you opt for the Windows 10 license as well. Can the cameras and NVR be set up in the office for analytics prior to deployment in the field? So in terms of turning on the metadata for the object classification, yes, that can be turned on the bench because it's not scene, it is scene dependent, but you don't need to mark off areas or program specific behaviors or anything like that. It's really just a checkbox turning on that AI work, as they call it, that classification. For more robust analytics, it's going to be scene dependent based on how the shot is framed. You're going to have to highlight, hey, this area is okay, this area is not, or this is the entrance versus this being the exit, things like that. Really require a bit more work in the field because it's based on exactly what the camera's looking at. So the easy button, so to speak, that just turns on that classification, absolutely. Very easy to turn on the bench or in the field. If you are going to take advantage of the analytic rules on top of that classification, that usually is more of a field install because of that. If the intent is to cover full view, if using other analytics, wait till the camera's in final location. Oh, Jason McCarthy. Yes, perfect. Glad we're in sync on that. All right, folks, we're quarter past. I have more time to give you. I'm just so grateful for the folks that were able to hop on, the folks that have been able to stay on through the Q&A. I'm going to make a recording of all this available to everybody. It'll probably take me the better part of the week to get it downloaded, edited, and up onto YouTube, but I will have a follow-up email for everybody just later this week. I'll re-include those data sheets in case you had any trouble grabbing them from the files here, and I'll have a link to that video as well. Oh, question here, can you show the notification console where we would set up that rule and send an email? Sure, that's really a part of event linking. So that's another way you could use something like this, that combination of either object detection or pairing it with the analytics. So when I go into my settings, under each server, you're going to see a host of different settings. And the one that we're going to look at here is event linking. Now, actually, I guess technically when we're sending an email, the first thing that we're going to be making is the notification profile for it. So bear with me. There's our notifications. So you have to tie your system into an email server. Let's say let's take that as read, that that's already done. I can make a new message profile. I can call it loitering detected. You can put a send rate. You can wait, for the start and end. You can kind of choose when the trigger happens in terms of the emails, who it's going to, and then what's the subject? Parking lot loitering. You can have it put in things like the system name that it was generated from, the date and time, the source in terms of maybe camera name or something like that. That's going to autofill based on what we put in. And once you've got your message done, then we go to event linking. And you're going to see when I make a new event, I've got different types of actions, motion, and then things like analytics. And here's where you see I set up an area and said, hey, if there's in this area, I want to know if there's a bicycle or a lingering pedestrian. And I can say when that lingering pedestrian happens, I want you to trigger a notification and send that email that I had just made. And you can set it so that, hey, maybe that has to last at least a certain amount of time. The analytics tend to already bake that type of logic in. So, yep, combination of event linking and notification, similar to the normal types of stuff we might send triggered emails about. Only now you can set up a capture area. It's considered an analytic at that point. I set up a capture area for whichever classes of items I want to look for, and I just set those up as my trigger for the email instead of an input or instead of motion or things like that. All right, I'll keep my eye on the chat here. Again, folks should be able to unmute yourselves if you want to ask your question out loud. Again, I'm famous for double muting, so I understand it taking a little bit to find that stuff. So I'll keep this going for another minute here in case there's any other questions. I know how this goes too. I think of my best questions at the end of the day when I'm out walking the dog or something like that, and I'll think, oh my God, I totally forgot to say this or ask this question when I had all the people there. Don't worry about it. We're always an email or a phone call away. So whether that's myself, you give us a call in the office here, whether that's your local IMI rep, it doesn't really matter when that great question comes to you. You can ask it whenever it comes to you. We're always just a call or an email away. All right. Well, then it seems like the questions have stopped coming in for now, so we'll keep an eye out for emails later and things like that. Thanks again, everybody, for joining on. For the folks who could stay on through the Q&A, I really do appreciate it. And I'll have some further updates for everybody later this week, so you can take another look at this presentation too. So thanks, everybody. Thanks again to the IMI folks for getting everybody involved. And hope everybody has a great morning, great rest of your day, great rest of your week. Enjoy, everybody. Have a good one.